The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it is Monday in the Rib. And a very, very exciting weekend went by in Fall River.
Yes, it was. Definitely was. Well, right off the bat.
With Captain Corona, I guess, again.
Yep. I was going to say, let's start off the show with the usual daily COVID reports. And it's very interesting. The cases in Fall River was up 13 positive cases, bringing it to a total of 1,446 cases in Fall River. There were 7,683 cases in Bristol County and 103,436 statewide. The number of deaths is still at 50 because, according to the mayor, we don't receive death reports on the weekend, which I find a little interesting, but okay.
Well, I think Rhode Island is not going to issue anything. They've already said on the weekends they're not going to do. So I guess now it's gotten to the point where they think it's under control enough to take their weekends off. We don't need daily political updates, which they are, as we found in Rhode Island with Gina, who was telling everybody they had to wear a mask when it came to a photo op. Ran out into the crowd and was hugging people with no masks when she was there at a protest. So that only applies to people who are law-abiding citizens and want police and want law and order. So everybody else can just do it whatever they want, and the laws do not apply to them. The laws against robbery, murder, nothing applies. As long as you're doing it and you can get media coverage from the liberal left media, you're fine. So I didn't see much coverage on Saturday at the support rally. I'm not going to call it a protest because it was kind of a pseudo protest about people who don't care about people's rights. The rally in support of Charlie, the guy who got assaulted, the 82-year-old man who got assaulted. There were many Trump signs there, and there were many, but there were also people there like me who were there to basically say, listen, whether you have a Trump sign, a Biden sign, I love alien signs, or whatever kind of sign you want to have, this is America. You're supposed to be able to do that as long as you're doing it peacefully. What you're not supposed to do is turn these into looting and rioting fests like they have in many communities. And then your action is to try to eliminate law and order. So I think it was this weekend, and of course they had a protest, Black Lives Matter protest, and a protest for I don't know whether I have to correct myself. I'm not sure what they refer to that thing they had. Is it a Black Lives Matter protest or is it a George Floyd protest?
I don't know either. I mean, sometimes they're very clear because they have George Floyd over everything, and sometimes they're not so clear. You have to wonder what are they talking about. I do know that they combined them greatly in many instances, so I think you got to take them from both sides of the street on that one, which is very interesting.
I mean that's where I have a problem, and I know somebody who watched our show was a little. They didn't say anything really. They said they know where we're coming from. Well, I hope you do know where we're coming from. We're coming from the fact that we have a right to our opinion if we express it peacefully. I don't have a right to commit a crime. I don't have a right to loot. I don't have a right to murder people. I have a right to protest, as I did Saturday, or not protest, but support any position. And as I said, to reiterate, I will stand with, sit in with anyone for any cause I believe is true. And we do believe that George Floyd's death was totally unnecessary, and those police officers should be prosecuted. So that does not make me a racist, because I will not kneel or I will not participate and condone lawlessness and anarchy. So I want to get that perfectly clear today, because the fact is that we are supposed to be a nation of laws, and we are dismantling this nation with this type of behavior. And so those protests, listen, they've been protesting Black Lives Matter with every single time a black is murdered, and in my opinion, in most cases, justifiably so. You know, when that black man was shot in the back by a police officer, there's no justification for shooting somebody who's running away. He doesn't pose a threat any longer. I mean, you go apprehend them, and ultimately, and you arrest them and bring them in. I mean, things like that. And every time you see a protest, to me, those protests are justifiable. If there's somebody and as I said, actually somebody called me, CJ, and I have to get this in, and they watched our show and they commended you on your statement of all lives matter. And I think that's a very, very important point. It's true, Black lives matter, but white lives matter and yellow lives matter. And everybody's lives are supposed to matter. And, you know, I understand you're talking about this systemic discrimination and everything else, but I can debate that sociologically with ethnocentrism and xenocentrism and all these other sociological terms that you can justify, or condemn an action. But the reality is all lives matter. Do Black lives matter? Yes, absolutely. Is police conduct, improper police conduct wrong? Absolutely. But they're using this for a anarchist agenda, an agenda to undo what protects this nation, its laws. They want to undo the nation. They want to remove police departments. And who does that hurt? And, you think about it. We don't see a lot of protests in Chicago where there's like 90 murders a weekend.
Right.
And most of them are black-on-black crime. They proved that. But we don't see a lot of people, that people are outraged by what happens in Chicago. We see it on the news all the time. But there should have been constant protests for the last, I don't know how many years, because let's face it, Chicago was a war zone.
Oh yeah, for the longest time. I mean, that was the highest number of deaths in the country, and highest crime rate. You couldn't beat it. I mean, it was just terrible. But you were talking about defunding police departments, and it's funny that you bring that up, because this was something I wanted to bring up today. The Minneapolis City Council voted to disband their police department. This was from Forbes magazine, and it was corrected, and it also appeared in Blue Lives Matter website. Correction, Forbes reported that Minneapolis City Council officially voted to disband the police. However, it appears that they did not formally vote yet. They announced that they had enough votes to disband the police and be veto proof. So that's
they may be veto proof, but they're not lawsuit proof, because I know that there have been on record fire departments that were sued, and the suits were won when they didn't provide adequate fire protection in a community. When the city refused to spend the money and the city was on the hook. Well, I'm going to tell you something. If somebody in my family was murdered, raped, or their house was burnt down, when they disbanded the police department, the city of Minneapolis is going to be bankrupt fairly quickly, because they have an absolute mandate by law to provide public safety, to ensure public safety. That's what the government is there for. The government is not there to placate a minority. And let's face it, those protests are fairly large in Minneapolis, but you used to live in that area. I don't know how big Minneapolis is.
It is big.
that that's representative of the majority of people in Minneapolis. Those protests to defund the police, there's a whole bunch of people sitting in Minneapolis in homes that says if they get rid of the police, these anarchists are going to be starting to. I think even one of them said it on one news media outlet. We're coming for you. We're coming for you in the suburbs. Coming for you in the residential communities. So get rid of the police and the criminals who are causing most of the problems and taking away the focus from the peaceful protests. They are going to have. It's going to be the Wild West.
Right.
And anybody who is so delusionary that they think this is a good thing needs their head examined. You know, I'm not saying, look, there should be rules and regulations. There should not be abuse of power by anyone, including politicians, by the way. You made a good statement before we went on the air. They want to defund someone. Let's defund the politicians because they're creating half of this mess. And that's the reality of this thing, because this is outrageous, and the lunatics are running the asylum. Of course these criminals don't want police, because now they'll go, you think they got a crime wave now? Wait till you get rid of the cops.
Well, it's interesting because they want to replace it with community-based standards. I don't know how much standards are going to stop a murder.
Well, look, I hate to say this, but we've proven. I mean, we don't. That's not even debatable. That's absolutely ridiculous. We can go back to the first set of laws people began to run by with the 10 Commandments. When Moses came down with the commandments, we've had laws, and they have proven in societies that they can ask people to be nice. That there's always going to be a segment of people who are not going to be nice. You have to have laws, and you have to have enforcements of those laws. There's no society. You know, that's the whole problem. You got a bunch of delusionary rich people and people who have their own agenda pushing this narrative, which is a false narrative. The reality is you cannot have a society where, people, how many people think a democracy means that the people run everything? Look up the definition of a democracy. It's a government where people are run, the majority rules, and they have representatives like we have. That's why it's a republic. But true democracy, by their definition, is anarchy. So what does that mean? It relegates the society to survival of the fittest. The ones who will commit the most heinous acts, who have the most firepower. Do you think that you can legislate morality, and you think that you can tell your community to be nice and they're going to be nice? There's not going to be come on, look at Ireland. The Irish were killing each other for how many years over religion? And they're the same people. And they're supposed to be a religious people. But yet there's always a reason for people to kill other people. And anybody who's as delusionary as it's just like, let's face it, you don't even have to look any farther than gun control. It's a proven fact that the areas with the most gun problems are the areas with the most gun legislation. You can't legislate. You can't pass a city ordinance saying we want everybody to be nice. People out in this community who are not nice, and all those academic bubble dwellers who live in a college environment and then go back to their nice house in the suburbs. When you disband the police, they will ultimately get to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think what they're trying to do is legislate by opinion or legislate by situation, both of which are not effective.
And that's the irony. Their opinion is a minority opinion, because let's take everybody at the demonstration, let's count heads and see what percentage of the population in Minneapolis, Minnesota was there.
Right.
So I know it's nowhere near 50%.
No, it's not. That's for sure.
25%. So the minority opinion will prevail, because it's not a true democracy when the loudest, most aggressive minority treated as the majority. And that's what's happening today.
Well, if that's the way it works, you and I should have absolute control because we're the loudest going and we're the biggest minority there is.
Yeah, we're a minority. We actually abide by the law. We just voice our opinion peacefully and support what we feel is correct and speak out against things that we think are not just, including government.
Right.
So, but that's the key. So, I guess somebody said they know who we are. Well, that's who we are. We're not afraid to sit for something we believe in. We're not afraid to sit in front of a camera or a computer or in front of a city council or in front of anybody and voice our opinion. I think that we represent what people in America want. We represent people who are willing to support what we believe in. We're not supporting any radical causes. I'm not saying that, I mean, if we were here like the extremely small minority that attempt to say that, George Floyd deserved it or something, I mean, of course, that's reprehensible. I mean, nobody in their right mind, we're not advocating violence. We're speaking out against it. We're not saying black lives don't matter. And as you said, which is very true, let's let them have Black Lives Matter. Remember that, but also all lives matter. I think there should be a sign right alongside that says all lives matter because yellow lives matter, black lives matter, Martians' lives matter, unless they're trying to invade the planet. But that's the reality. And people, today, look, this weekend we saw an example. The rally, as I said, and they can call it a protest, the rally for Charlie was extremely peaceful, no problems at all. Yet the rally at Lafayette Park then turned into a problem where they had to make arrests, say they get out of control. Lawlessness would prevail. And if the police didn't break it up, it might have resulted in damages to businesses and looting. Who knows? Who knows what the next step is because it already deteriorated. And I will tell you something about the rally. At the end of the rally, as it was breaking up, when the thunderstorm was moving in, I happened to look across the street. And you weren't there when I got there. There were a few people holding Black Lives Matter signs. There was no problem. They didn't say anything. They were standing there on the other side of the street. And I think I had a conversation with them. If I would have seen them and they would have been there earlier, I would have went over to Dave Steinoff, who put it together and did a very good job, by the way. And I would have said, invite them over to our side because we weren't protesting against them. We weren't rallying against their position.
Right.
I think most of the people in that crowd agreed with us, with their position, that what was done to George Floyd and that all lives matter. And that would have shown how it's supposed to be done. That's why we were there, to show that people have a right to protest and demonstrate if they feel something is wrong. And those people were demonstrating, and so they could walk over to the other side. And that's one of the problems. The far left can't do that. They can't walk across the street and stand alongside, because a lot of those people had Trump signs. I was there basically to say we have a constitutional right to protest for something we believe in. But I would have invited them over and said, stand with us. You can hold your Black Lives Matter. These guys can hold Trump signs. If you're both exercising your right as Americans, and that would have been a great shot to take.
Oh yeah, what? And what's interesting is we say this all the time on our show. It's okay to disagree without being disagreeable, and we say that always on our show.
Oh, absolutely. And when they begin to murder people indiscriminately, and it's not only, like I said, let's have a society where we say all lives matter. That there should be no injustice perpetrated against any individual, because look what happened. They murdered a 70-some-year-old retired police captain, a black police captain who was protecting his friend's business. So I guess whoever murdered him, Black lives didn't matter. And here's a man that spent 38 years or so protecting the citizens in community as a police officer. Then he's murdered by a bunch of anarchists and ends up bleeding out on the street. So is that what you really want? You people want to defund law and order? I don't know. It boggles my mind when I see stuff like this. It absolutely boggles my mind.
I hear you. I hear you. Hey, let's get on to the budgets.
Ooh, the budget.
According to WBUR Radio, May revenue reports show Massachusetts is $2.25 billion short on taxes. With Massachusetts in its final month of the fiscal year, state budget officials are looking at a balance sheet that shows tax revenues coming in $2.253 billion, billion with a B, short of expectations for the year, an 8.3% drop that might have been covered with reserves or federal bailouts. Again, looking for federal bailouts, which, as we know, senators have said, let the states file bankruptcy. I don't think there's going to be another stimulus bill to prepare for the states. And I think that's where our mayor, our fearless lack of leadership mayor, is making a mistake. I think he's making a huge mistake saying that he's waiting to hear how much he's going to get from the state and how much he's going to get from the federal government. I don't think we're going to get federal monies. And I don't think there's going to be a change in the CARES Act to allow CARES Act money to be used to meet budgetary needs. I don't think it's going to happen. I could be wrong, but I really don't think it's going to happen. And I think that the budget needs to be prepared right now based upon a worst case scenario, not the best case scenario. They don't want to do that because they've never wanted to look at the worst case scenario.
Well, I think you're right, CJ, and I hope you're right that there's going to be no alteration in the way it's suspended. Because listen, the money that's there to help any costs incurred by this and any money's lost due to the pandemic is fine. But to be able to bail out Fall River because of their uncontrolled spending and their lack of financial oversight with money that was really designated for another purpose is wrong. Because you know what that means? They will not be held accountable. The $4.7 million gap of deficit will disappear, and they will say that. And look what's going to happen in Massachusetts. As you said, we're $2.2 billion, which is half of how much of our previous surplus, $1.1 billion. And so what are they going to use this as a justification for? To raise your taxes, and don't let them. Because once they raise the taxes, they never go down. Have you ever seen a tax increase that ever went away? It doesn't go away.
It doesn't go away. It doesn't.
Go away. So forget about it. And the fact is that this is all they know how to do. They can't tighten their belt. They can't oversee spending. And even when they get a surplus, they spend it. They don't save it. Because had we saved that money, we would only have a $1.1 billion shortfall. And we've had them before. And where are they going to cut? Are they going to cut their political friends' jobs? Are they going to cut their stipends and all their bonuses? No. And in the city of Fall River, what are they going to do? Threaten education, police, fire? You think they're going to threaten the mayor's chief of staff, administrative assistant, press secretary, clerk of the toilet paper, and any other job they can figure out? No, those jobs are not going to go. Those automatic pay raises for Mary Sahadi and the financial lack of financial oversight crew, they're not going to go away. She just got about $45,000 worth of raises over the past 3 years. They jacked up their salary $40,000. She got another $5,000 raise when she got rehired by the mayor, and she gets an automatic cost of living raise. So you think any of that's going to get cut? They're asking, the rumor is, and I can't confirm this, but the rumor is that they're asking for givebacks from the unions. They're asking for givebacks from the financial team who has allowed this city to spend, just never stop spending, and has never, ever gotten in front of that council and said, well, this is why we ran out of money. Have they ever found out where the money and what happened with the 22 windows, with all the other fiascos we've had in this city where money just disappears? And by the way, you said you haven't heard from one city councilor.
I haven't heard from any city council. I called several of them, and I left them all voice messages.
14 pages that prove that we've saved over $50 million in healthcare. And I asked the question, when the city saved all that money, why don't they have money, and where did all that savings money go? Because they never reinvested it into healthcare. So, but I have not received one phone call except for two counselors, and one counselor who's been talking about this with me on a regular basis, Michelle Dion. And then Linda Pereira called me up before she was having a meeting with the mayor. Then the mayor called me that night, so I'm sure Linda told him about it. And we had a discussion, as I spoke about on a previous show. But the reality is, the other 7 city councilors, including the president of the city council, who I took the time to make a phone call to and leave a message, because you can never get him if you call him. And I told him to look at that package and get back to me. I'm still waiting. And as you're waiting for a call to you. So again, our city council this November is not running, but in next November, when they hit us with the premature debt override, when they attempt to try to get more money out of the pockets of the city employees and retirees because of their inability to control spending. CAG is going to actively recruit candidates because we're going to, as you said, and that's a nice little buzzword now, we can make that part of our mantra, CAG's mantra. We are going to defund them, the politicians.
It's about time we do. It really is. Well, it looks like we're running out of time. We only got a couple of minutes left here. But going back, maybe the mayor should take serious consideration. Mr. Mayor, do something different. Start cutting from the top and work your way down. Don't cut the guy who collects the taxes. Cut the guy who's supposed to be the collector, which you've given that job away to Bay Coast Bank. Oh, by the way, Bay Coast Bank, Nick Chris, is in cahoots with the Karams, and they want a tax break. Imagine that. Is this the payback you're going to get, Mr. Chris? Is that you're going to get a tax break? You're going to get low interest loans? Is that the way this is going to work? Oh, what a payback that makes. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty important topic. I think we have to cover in a lot more detail on Wednesday.
Well, the city council is going to be voting on it tomorrow, so we're going to have to see how they work out. Hey, everyone.
Well, they don't pay attention, but let's see what happens. We're going to be watching this.
Yep. Well, everyone, thanks for watching. It's always great for us to be in your home. I greatly appreciate you bringing us in there. Remember, stay healthy, stay safe, and stay angry.
And protest peacefully, and all lives matter, and everybody has the right to an opinion, no matter how ridiculous it is.
That's it. Thank you.